personal reference, I'd like to tell you about an incident involving my 8-year-old grandson. It seems he came home from school several weeks ago and surprised his mother and father, my son, with this nice booklet of short stories. The first one is entitled, My Grandpa Was a Fighter in World War II. What he did in the war was fly planes off an aircraft carrier. His ship was called the Princeton. He was fighting against Japan. For the 3 years and 8 months he flew, he shot down 5 Japanese planes. Actually, it was 6.5. One day in the war, his ship got attacked. The U.S. shot down all the planes, but one escaped and dropped lots of missiles, which blew up my grandpa's ship. Kaboom! They were trying to stop the fire, but it wouldn't go out. There was another ship besides his ship called the Birmingham. My grandpa had to jump like a cannonball off the side of his ship and swim over to the side of the other ship. Luckily, he was still alive. That's the whole story and all I know by Thomas Drury. How do you like that? Tommy tells the story in a minute and a half that I've been allocated 20 minutes to tell you about. That's children for you. They get right to the point. My most dramatic exposure to the Battle of Leyte Gulf, our subject this morning, came all wrapped up in one day, October 24th, 1944, the longest day of my life. Actually, it started the day before. The Japanese show plan called for all-out attack on the American forces on October 24th. So they had observation planes out all night trying to locate our task force. Actually, I think they already had located us and they were just trying to keep us in sight. Our task force, 38.3, was composed of 2 large carriers, the Essex, flagship for Admiral Sherman, and the Lexington, flagship for Admiral Mark Mitchell, 2 fast carriers, Princeton and Langley, 2 battleships, Massachusetts and South Dakota, 4 cruisers, Birmingham, Reno, Santa Fe, and Mobile, and 13 destroyers. 8 of us pilots were assigned CAP duty that day, the 24th. We were awakened about 4 a.m. It was dark when we took off. Because of the excitement on the flight deck, coupled with the darkness, and in the haste to get us off, because bogies were already on the radar screen, I didn't get to fly my regular plane, the Paoli Local, nor did I get to fly in my regular division. Instead, I found myself as wingman on Red Shirley, who was the leading ace in our squadron. Normally, I would have flown wing on Carl Brown, the second leading ace in our squadron. Well, no big deal, because I thought as soon as the sun came out, I'd slide over to my regular spot in Carl Brown's division, still maintaining radio silence, and signal for that pilot to get back over here to Red Shirley's where he belonged. However, that scenario never came to pass, because no sooner had we rendezvoused after takeoff than Red Shirley's 4 of us were vectored out to a single bogey, which we took care of. And as soon as we got back on the station, Carl Brown's 4 were vectored out on another single, which turned out, incidentally, to be a friendly. I guess he had his identification turned off, or it wasn't working. Then we went out on another single and shot it down. And so it went. I never did have an opportunity to get back in my regular division. Then we got word from CIC to take a heading, all 8 of us, both divisions. Well, that told us there was going to be more than one enemy plane this time. Our division of 4 planes had an altitude advantage over the other 4 since they were out on a vector last, and this meant that the 4 of us would get there first. But now the sun was out and we were about 50 to 70 miles from our task force towards the Philippines. And I saw the sky become blackened with Japanese planes. My division later notified the ship, tally-ho, 80 Jap planes. And then he thoughtfully added, better send help. To which the task force responded affirmative, and we were informed that Princeton had 12 planes that could be launched, and the Essex would launch some also. Our job on the CAP was to keep the enemy from getting close to the task force. So there wasn't any choice as to what we were going to do. There was no real decision-making process. We just had to hope that Carl Brown's 4 would hurry on up here, and that the others just being launched could get here as quickly as they could. Academically, I knew it would take some time for the planes to be launched off of those carriers and to get up here. But I do recall taking some comfort in knowing that they were on the way. So the 4 of us went on into this Japanese formation. I think each one of the 4 of us got 1 plane each on that first pass. And then all hell broke loose. It was just one huge mass of airplanes trying to shoot each other down. I think the 4 of us shot down 15 Japanese planes. Of course, we had those 2 singles earlier in the morning also. And we soon found ourselves out of ammunition and very low on fuel. We returned to base. I was one of the last pilots to land on the Princeton before the bomb hit. I was in the ready room being debriefed when the bomb hit. Dark black smoke poured in from the air vent. It was announced over the loudspeaker system that we had indeed been hit by a bomb, and the aviators were ordered to go to the flight deck and stand beside their airplane. I guess originally the captain felt we might be able to launch, but the bomb went through the flight deck and it exploded in the hangar deck. Now, as fate would have it, our torpedo planes were on the hangar deck preparing for a raid themselves later on that morning. So there they were, fully fueled, fully armed, so that this one little old bomb that normally would have done much damage started to do its thing. The domino effect. The fires were intense, and our torpedo planes started to explode. One blew the aft elevator out. One near me where I was standing and beside my airplane blew the forward elevator out, and this huge, heavy thing just blew up and came down, came back down, tilted on its side, and they're heavy rascals. At this point, the captain ordered all personnel not associated with the fire control party to abandon ship. I climbed down a rope toward the water. Unlike my grandson's story about diving off like a cannonball, I like his story better than mine. The destroyer Irwin was parallel to the Princeton on the port side, so my goal was to swim over to her. I had been on the swimming team at the University of Pennsylvania before I enlisted in the Navy, but with all the excitement, the adrenaline had been flowing for some hours now, and drinking salt water going through the waves was far different than I was used to in a swimming pool. The Irwin had a cargo net over the side, and I was not too ashamed to accept the helping hands of some of their wonderful crew members to get up those final steps of that cargo net and to be literally and figuratively tossed over the top and onto the deck of the Irwin. I was completely exhausted, and I must have fallen asleep because I was rudely awakened by the sound of general quarters. I thought it was the next morning, but apparently it was only about an hour later. It was another Japanese plane that got through, and I remember saying to myself, I don't think I'm up to a second sinking all in one day. But enemy plane, the Birmingham and the other ships that were helping put out the fires on the Princeton, they had to pull away to defend themselves against air attack just as they were about to get the fires on the Princeton under control. By the time general quarters was over and the Birmingham was able to move back alongside the Princeton, the fires had once again gotten the upper hand. In fact, the biggest explosion of all occurred as the Birmingham was right up tight to the Princeton, putting their hoses back on board. And they sustained enormous damage and enormous casualties. 241 members of their crew were killed. 412 were wounded. Just being a Boy Scout trying to help the Princeton stay afloat. The Princeton herself had 114 deaths and 190 wounded. More lives were lost on the Birmingham and the Princeton that day than during the Battle of Midway. Well, that was enough. The Irwin was ordered to torpedo the Princeton. Now, the Irwin's normal complement of 300 plus was joined by 600 of us Princeton survivors that they had picked up. So to say she was overloaded was an understatement. In addition, our torpedo director had been damaged by banging against the Princeton earlier in the morning when she was trying to help put out the fires. Nevertheless, the Irwin fired 2 torpedoes. One went wide. The other one ran erratically out. And then, to the shock of all of us standing there on the Irwin, did a 180-degree turn. And here was this porpoising missile coming back on a collision course directly towards us. The skipper of the Irwin ordered flank speed. He did some kind of maneuver, and that torpedo passed harmlessly behind us, just barely. And again, I thought to myself, boy, one sinking a day it's enough. So, by this time, the cruiser Reno was then ordered to move in and finish off the Princeton. I guess it must have been about 6 p.m. There was this tremendous explosion, dense mushroom rose more than 1,000 feet. When the air had cleared enough to reveal the carrier's position, there was no more Princeton. That was truly the longest day of my life. I would like to take this opportunity to salute the men on the Princeton who stayed behind to fight the fires, and the men on the Birmingham, the men on the Irwin and others who unselfishly helped a friend in trouble. Those men are my heroes. They are, I think, the unsung heroes of the war. In closing, I'll borrow an expression from my grandson's short story. Let's see, how'd he say it? Oh yeah. Luckily, my grandpa was still alive.